Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We're continuing to learn Hilchos Chol HaMoed. Meretz Hashem. Today we'll be learning Daf Yud Gimel Amid Beis. We pick up on Yud Gimel Amid Aleph in Siman Taf Kuf Mem Aleph with Sif Dalid. Says the Mechaber, Asar l'sakein malbushav umin olav hakeruim. You are not allowed to repair your torn garments or your torn shoes. And what the Mechaber means over here is, you're not allowed to perform a Maise Uman. You're not allowed to do the work of a craftsman in order to repair a ripped garment or shoes that have become torn in some manner. So if your suit got ripped, your suit ripped on Yom Tov or on Chol HaMoed, and now you want to sew it, you want to stitch it back together again, or your shoes need new heels or new soles, whatever it is, if it's going to take a Maise Uman in order to repair them, you are not allowed to repair them on Chol HaMoed. Because even though this is a Tzarech HaMoed, you need your shoes, you need your suit for the Moed, you're allowed to perform malacha if it's a Maise Hedyot, you're not allowed to perform malacha if it's a Maise Uman. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Ois Katan Yud, Asar l'sakein. This is true, even though it will become torn more. It will the garment or the shoe will become damaged. It will get the damage. the words are. I'm not getting the words. The damage to the shoes or to the garment will become worse if you don't repair it. So let's say, for example, you have a pair of shoes with leather soles, and the soles are worn through, and you turn over your shoe on the first day of Chol HaMoed, and you see that the sole is worn out, and you see the cork midsole showing through the shoe. If you're going to keep on wearing the shoe, you're going to wear out the midsole. Now it's going to take a greater repair in order to fix the shoe. So if you don't fix it now, it's going to get worse. Now, you might have thought that that's considered a davar of it. Maybe now that's something which is causing me a loss, and therefore, if it's a davar of it, maybe I'm allowed to do the repair, even if it requires a Maise Uman. This is why the Chofetz Chaim is telling you no. Even though it will get damaged even more if you do not repair it, Asr, it's still Asr. Why? And over here, the Chofetz Chaim tells us, gives us a rule as to how to understand what's considered a davar aved and what's not. He says, "D'lo mikri davar aved," because we don't consider something to be a davar aved, ela she'ikar hadavar nifsad, only when the item itself is going to get ruined. Ikar hadavar nifsad, the thing itself will become ruined. Aval b'shvil ma'at toisvis kilkol loy. But if it's going to become damaged somewhat worse, if the damage is going to be worsened, but the thing is not ruined. So there's a difference between when your shoe is going to be destroyed. If your shoe is going to be destroyed, so that's a davar aved, you're ruining a pair of shoes. Then you could do malacha even if it's going to require a Maise Uman. But if you have a little hole in your sole, and the hole in the sole is going to get worse, so that's not a davar aved. Okay, there's already a damage. The damage is going to get a little bit worse. Even if it's a case where right now there's a little bit of a damage, the damage might get a little bit worse, and because the damage becomes a little bit worse, maybe I'm going to have to spend a little bit more money in order to repair it. What comes to my mind is, sometimes you could get away with repairing a shoe by doing a half sole instead of a full sole. Maybe now you're going to have to do a full sole instead of a half sole. So then you might have room to ask a shaila to a rav, how much more is it going to cost? But if the ikar davar is not nifsad, if the shoe is not going to be ruined, then the Chofetz Chaim says that's not called a davar aved. B'shvil ma'at toisvis kilkol loy. If there's only a small amount of additional kilkol, then loy. But what's interesting about the way the Chofetz Chaim words it is, aval b'shvil ma'at toisvis kilkol loy. If there's only a small amount of additional damage, then not. How about if the shoe is not going to get ruined, but there's going to be significantly greater damage, so that it will cost more in order to repair it. So I think I saw... Yes, if you want to take a look, you could look in the Dirshu footnote number 7. I'm not going to go through the footnote because it gets a little bit tricky over here. I don't want to take the time for it now. But if you take a look at the Sha'ar Tzion's Cotton Tezayin and you look at this Dirshu footnote number 7, this is what they address really in that footnote. So again, I want to be clear. What the rule, the way the Chofetz Chaim seems to write it over here, he says if the item is going to get ruined, that's a davar ha'ovid. If the damage to the item is going to get a little bit worse, that's not a davar ha'ovid. Why? Because davar ha'ovid means it's going to get ruined. Over here, it's not going to get ruined. It's damaged. The damage is going to get a little bit worse. The gray area is, what if the damage is going to get significantly worse? The item is still not going to be ruined, but the damage is going to get significantly worse, so that it's going to cost me an appreciable greater amount of money in order to repair it. And for that, I would refer you to Dirshu footnote number 7. Continues the Mishnah Berurah here, nice cut and yud. But if we're talking about a case where the garment or the shoe is going to become totally ruined if you don't repair it on Chol HaMoed, then mutter. Then you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to repair it. Af al Yidei Yisrael. You could even give it to a Yiddish craftsman, l'sakin, to fix it. Ve'ein tzarich shinoi. And if he's an uman, if it's a Yiddish cobbler, he's allowed to fix it in the totally normal way. He doesn't have to do a shinoi. To have a davar ha'ovid, because if the shoe is going to get ruined, that's a davar ha'ovid. V'hani milik yishetzarich leilech behem b'chol HaMoed. But of course, says the Chofetz Chaim, this is only when you need the shoes for Chol HaMoed or for Yom Tov. If you don't need the shoes, if these are your winter boots that you're not going to wear until after Tu B'Shvat, so then what are you doing this for Chol HaMoed? Then don't fix it now at all. It's not a tzarich HaMoed at all. Ha'ein tzarich lam b'chol HaMoed pshita d'aser. If you don't need the shoes now on Yom Tov or Chol HaMoed, then of course it's aser. Di'anichem, put them away in the closet. V'lo yishtamish behem, don't use them ad lachar HaMoed until after Yom Tov. Now, I do want to point out to you in Sha'ar Tzion's Cotton Tezayin, a little bit down into Ois Cotton Tezayin, the Chofetz Chaim says, "Ve'im yachol liknois minolim chadoshim." Let's say you have shoes and you see that the soles are wearing out, and you realize that if you wear the shoes are going to become ruined. So, okay, if the shoes are going to become ruined, then we said it's a davar ha'ovid, and you're allowed to have them repaired even with a ma'aseh uman. But the Chofetz Chaim says, but what if you have the ability to go to the shoe store and buy a new pair of shoes? So go buy a new pair of shoes. It's a tzarich HaMoed, so you're allowed to go buy shoes on Chol HaMoed, tzarich HaMoed. So buy a new pair of shoes and take this pair of shoes where the sole is worn out, put them away until after Yom Tov, and then have them repaired after Yom Tov. So the Chofetz Chaim says, if you have the ability to buy new shoes, then you should not be makel and go ahead and fix the shoes on Chol HaMoed. The Sula have a Bechlal davar ha'ovid, because now it's no longer considered a davar ha'ovid. Don't wear them, don't ruin them. Instead, go buy new shoes. Now, right when I saw that Sha'ar Tzion, so right away you say to yourself, wait a second. So is the Chofetz Chaim telling me that in such a case I'm mechuyev to go spend $100, $150, whatever it is, to go buy a new pair of shoes because I can't fix my other shoes? So there's a Dirshu footnote here, footnote number 9, and I think there's a typo in the footnote. But in Dirshu footnote number 9, he says here, V'imkana loy, and it says here loy with an aleph. I believe it should be loy with a vav. V'imkana loy mikvar, if he already bought new shoes. So he bought shoes not all that long ago. It's too early for me to buy new shoes. I just bought these shoes, and these shoes usually last me for 2 years, and in my budget, I generally buy new shoes every 2 years. So now you're telling me that because I see the damage now on Chol HaMoed, now I can't fix them, and instead I have to go buy another pair of shoes? I wasn't ready to buy another pair of shoes now. Why am I spending money on another pair of shoes now? So then das again Reb Nissan Karelitz Zatzal she'ein kavanas Mishnah Berurah l'chayvei ba'ofen zeh liknos chadashim. That it is not the intent of the Chofetz Chaim to say that you must go out and buy a new pair of shoes. What he means is, if you're talking about the type of garment or the type of shoe where you buy a new one every couple of months. So all right, so you were going to buy a new one around now anyway. So go buy a new one now and avoid doing the malacha on Chol HaMoed. But if that's not the case, if it would be totally out of the normal for you to go buy a new pair of shoes now, then the Chofetz Chaim is not coming to be mechayev you to go spend the money to go buy new shoes now. Okay. Let's go weiter in the Shulchan Aruch. V'chein aser loymar le'ena Yehudi l'saknam. So, if your shoes or your suit became torn, we said you're not allowed to repair it on Chol HaMoed with a Maisa Uman. Similarly, says the Mechaber, you're not allowed to give it to a non-Jew to repair it. So don't think that you could take the suit to the non-Jewish tailor and have the non-Jewish tailor repair it to Chol HaMoed. And don't think you could take the shoes and bring them to the non-Jewish cobbler and have the non-Jewish cobbler repair them on Chol HaMoed. No, you're not allowed to. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yud Aleph, V'chein also loyma l'nachri. Revusa nakat ha'mechaber. The Mechaber is telling you a chiddush over here. Even though we're talking about a situation where there is some financial loss to you if you don't repair the shoes now or the suit now, it's still forbidden for you to give it to a non-Jew to repair it with a Maisa Uman. And certainly if it was a different scenario where there's no hefsid to you at all, it would certainly be aser. Which we'll see Mirz Hashem soon, Bezos Hashem. Okay. Says the Ramah, 2 lines from the bottom, in the middle of the line in the Shulchan Aruch. Mihu al yedei shinui shari l'saknam ktsas l'tzarech hamoyed. The Ramah says, like I explained to you, when the Mechaber says that you're not allowed to repair your garment or repair your shoes, that means you're not allowed to do a Maisa Uman. But the Ramah is saying, if you have the ability to fix the suit or to fix the shoes with a shinui, by doing it in an atypical way, then you're allowed l'saknam ktsas. Then you could do a minor repair on Chol HaMoed. And clearly what the Ramah is telling us over here is that this malacha that you want to do to repair the suit or the shoes, if it's a Maisa Hedyot, if you're doing it with a shinui and it's a Maisa Hedyot, so then it's Tzarech HaMoed, and then the malacha is mutter. It's only aser if it's a Maisa Uman. Like the Mishnah Berurah says in Ois Katan Yud Beis, Miu al yedei shinui. What does the Ramah mean when he says if you do it with a shinui? Explains the Chofetz Chaim, Hainu im haya uman tzarech shinui. If you happen to be a cobbler, so you're a professional cobbler, and you want to repair the shoe on Chol HaMoed, then you have to do it with a shinui because you are an uman. You're a professional. So if you want to do that malacha, if you want to do the malacha of shoe repair on Chol HaMoed, even if it's tzarech hamoyed, you have to do it with a shinui. V'hashinui mavur l'kamei b'sifhei. And soon in sifhei we'll see what kind of shinui you have to use. Avalim hu hedyot. But if you're not a cobbler or you're not a tailor, then you don't have to make a shinui. Then toifer kedarkoi. Then you could sew it. You could sew the suit or sew the shoes in your normal way, because you are not an uman. So when you do it, it's not going to be a Maisa Uman. When you do it, it's going to be a Maisa Hedyot. Maisa Hedyot l'tzarech hamoyed is mutter. V'chol zeh ein a mutter rak b'tzarech lamoyed. And of course, nothing is mutter over here on Chol HaMoed unless it's being done l'tzarech hamoyed. Says the Mechaber in Sif Hey, bottom line. Mi shetzarech loy beged b'moyed. Somebody who needs a garment to wear on Chol HaMoed. Something happened, he doesn't have a shirt, he doesn't have a suit. Im haya hedyot, if he's an amateur, if he's an amateur tailor, or someone's an amateur seamstress, im haya hedyot, ve'enoi mohir ba'oisa malacha, and you're not adept and quick at performing this type of malacha, so you're an amateur. You know how to take a needle and thread, and you know how to make basic stitches, but this is not something that you're adept at. It's not something that you could do quickly. You're a hedyot. You're not a professional. You're an amateur. Then, hareza oisai soikedarkai. then if you have the ability, you could go sew a garment in your normal fashion. So what's at play over here? It's Chol HaMoed. And you realize you don't have a suit jacket. And you have no way to buy one. You have no way to get one. And you know basically what to do with the needle and thread. And you happen to have a pattern in the house for a men's jacket. And, you look at it and you say to yourself, well, I guess I know how to put the needle in the thread. And I could do basic stitching. So I'll stitch it together. So, okay, you need a jacket. It's a Tzarech HaMoed. You're doing the malacha of Teufer. It's malacha, but malacha l'Tzarech HaMoed is mutter if it's a Ma'aseh Hedyot. And what you're doing is a Ma'aseh Hedyot. So then, okay, then it's mutter. Let's go back to Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting Yud Gimel. Misha tzarech lebeged. The Mechaber said if somebody needs a garment. So he brings down the Chavetz Chaim an interesting scenario. Tinoik shenoilad b'chag. Let's say a baby was born on the first day or the second day of Sukkot. Now, if a baby is born on the first or second day of Sukkot, when's the bris? The bris is either Shmini Atzeres or Simchas Torah. Aser lasai sloi begadim chadashim b'moyed lamol oisai. You're not allowed to go ahead and sew a bris outfit. In other words, you might say to yourself, wait a second, this is a Tzarech HaMoed. The bris is going to be on Yom Tov, and I want my baby to have a beautiful bris outfit for the bris. So it's a Tzarech HaMoed. I'm a Hedyot. I'll go sew up quickly in an amateurish fashion. I'll sew him a nice bris outfit. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no, you're not allowed to do that. V'loi mikri l'Tzarech HaMoed l'chvoid aviv lisa oisai lahamila. This is not called a Tzarech HaMoed that the father wants to have a nice, fresh, new Mila outfit to take the baby to the bris Mila in. Why is that not called a Tzarech HaMoed? Because what do you need that for? You don't need a sewn together bris outfit. Get a bolt of very nice white silk, get a bolt of beautiful embroidered cloth, and swaddle the baby. A baby does not need an outfit that's sewn together and formed perfectly. Newborn babies are swaddled all the time. So take a beautiful piece of fabric and swaddle the baby. So there's mamish no tzarech over here. Okay. So I find this interesting. You see, I told you yesterday that Tzarech HaMoed doesn't mean something that has to be Yom Tov related. The Chavetz Chaim is not saying that the reason this is not a Tzarech HaMoed is because this has nothing to do with Yom Tov. What the Chavetz Chaim is saying is this is not a Tzarech HaMoed because it's not a Tzarech. The father got a Kranken cup that he wants a nice new Mila outfit. You don't need a nice new Mila outfit. Get a beautiful bolt of cloth and swaddle the baby, and it'll be just as bakavidik as a bris outfit. So there's no tzarech here at all. There's no tzarech. It's not a tzarech HaMoed. You can't do malacha. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, 2 lines from the bottom, middle of the line. B'chayodam klal kuf yud, in the chayodam klal kuf yud, siv zayin nistapek. The chayodam is mesupik. Hatzorich litvar l'tzarech HaMoed. If we have a case where somebody does need to do needlework, he does need to do sewing on Chol HaMoed, and it's going to be mutter. He's a Hedyot, and he has the need to do some sewing. But ve'in lechutim b'meh litvar. Guess what? He doesn't have any thread. He has to put on a button, and he doesn't have any thread to do it with. So the chayodim is mesupik im mutter litvais chutim b'shvil zeh. Is he allowed to go ahead and spin thread in order to make thread, right? The sewing is mutter. So if the sewing is mutter, am I also allowed to go ahead and spin thread for the sewing? So the chayodim is mesupik. And if you look at the chayodim, it looks to me, I wasn't ma'ayin in it, but looking at the chayodim, it looks to me like the chayodim suffix is this considered a problem of tircha yisera? That there's a lot of tircha involved, fine handiwork in going ahead and spinning thread. And, you need a decent amount of thread, so you're going to be sitting there spinning thread. Could be that that's already a tircha yisera, and that wouldn't be mutter on Chol HaMoed. Ice cutting your dalit. So he said, if you need to sew, if you're a Hedyot, ve'enoi mohir. The Mechaber gave us 2 prerequisites. It sounds like 2 prerequisites. You have to be a Hedyot, you have to be an amateur, ve'enoi mohir, and you're not adept and quick at doing this malacha. Explains the Chavetz Chaim, this is not 2 separate prerequisites. Siman echad hu. This is one prerequisite. The stam hedyet, the stam uman, mohir. How do I know that you're a hedyet? How do I know that you're an amateur? Because if you were an uman, if you were a professional, you would be adept and quick at doing the sewing. If you're not adept and quick at doing the sewing, that means you're a hedyet, you're not an uman. Brings this down from the Gra. And now he gives us another interesting siman how to know when it comes to sewing if somebody reaches the level of an uman, of a professional, of a craftsman, or he's considered a hedyet. Says the Chavetz Chaim, and he brings this down from the Magen Avram, who gets it from the Rosh. V'chol mi sheyedea lahoitzi maloi machat bebas achas. What this seems to mean is, if you have the ability where you could take a needle that has thread, of course, attached to it, and you could make, push the needle through the fabric to form a stitch, and then before you pull the stitch tight, you push the needle through another layer, and then through another layer, and then through another layer, and then through another layer. So what you're doing is you're setting up, let's say, 10 stitches all at once. The length of the needle. You take the entire needle and you push the needle through multiple folds in the garment so that you're forming multiple stitches at once. And then you pull it tight so that you close up all the stitches in one shot, and you could do that neatly. That's considered an uman. Or sheyedeya lechavein imra b'sfas chalukai. If you can make a nice even hem at the base of the garment, you can make it nice and crisp and even. Su eina b'klal hedyet. You are not a hedyet, ela uman. You are considered already a craftsman. The dine kidul kameh. And the din of a craftsman, the Mechaber is about to teach us now. So far here in Sif Hey, what the Mechaber said was, if you need a beged l'tzarech hamoed, so if you're a hedyet, so you could just pick up the needle and thread and do your thing, because whatever you do is going to be a ma'aseh hedyet. But now, how about if you're not a hedyet? How about if you happen to be a tailor by trade? So you're an uman. Do we say that because you're an uman, now you can't do any sewing? Or can you, the tailor, do sewing if you do a ma'aseh hedyet? So, says the Mechaber here in the top line, V'emahaya uman mahir. How about if you're not an amateur? You are a craftsman, and you are mahir. You are adept and quick. Then, hareza oisa oisa ma'aseh hedyet. So you could go ahead and you could sew, but you have to do a ma'aseh hedyet. What does it mean? How do we qualify a ma'aseh hedyet? Says the Mechaber, Tahainu sheyaset tfirois rechavos. It means you make very broad stitches. You make very coarse stitches, nice big ones, not tiny little neat stitches. You make big, like basting stitches. Utvira achas lamaila, va'achas lamata, and you don't make the stitches in an even row. You have stitches here, and then you go down, you have stitches here, and then you go up, and you have stitches there. Keshine akelev, like the uneven teeth of a dog. Says the Mishnah Berurah. Oh, he's cutting. No Mishnah Berurah here. Says the Ramah, Haggah. In the opinion of the Ramah, the Chol Adam Yachmer al Atzmai Litvar B'Shinoi. That the Ramah says everybody who has to do sewing on Chol HaMoed should be stringent, and they should consider themselves to be an uman, and they should make sure to make the stitches big stitches and uneven stitches so that it should be a ma'aseh hedyet. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut in Tesvav. The Chol Adam Yachmer al Atzmai. Everybody should be stringent on themselves, and they should only sew with a shinoi. Why? Ki roiv b'nei Adam yichayim lahaitzi v'lo machat b'bas achas fe'em echlal uman. The Chavetz Chaim says because going by the bar of being able to do one needle's length of stitches at the same time and then pulling it taut, he says based on that, most people are considered to be an uman when it comes to sewing. So therefore, if you're going to sew on Chol HaMoed, you should make sure to do it in a ma'aseh hedyetik way. Continues the Ramah, V'loi mahani le'uman litvar al yedei sheyeshana ba'achizas hamachat b'yodai. Don't think that an uman, a tailor, you're telling him that he has to do a ma'aseh hedyet on Chol HaMoed, so he'll say, okay, you know what, instead of holding the needle the way I normally hold the needle, I'll make a shinoi and I'll hold the needle a different way. Says the Ramah, no, you can't get away with that. V'loi mahani le'uman litvar al yedei sheyeshana ba'achizas hamachat b'yodai, Ella rather be'inon shinoi hanikr. We need a shinoi that's going to be recognizable in the finished product. We have to be able to look at the finished product and say that's a Maaseh Hedyot. Says the Mishnah, Berurah is cut into Zayin Shinoi Nikar. What does that mean, a recognizable Shinoi? Hainu Shia Nikar Batfira Atzma. The stitches, the sewing, the final product has to show that it's a Maaseh Hedyot. V'loi b'inyan acher. There's no other action that makes it a Maaseh Hedyot, the way you're holding it or something like that. V'dan, you should know the bein lahedyot she'oisa oisa kedarkai, whether we're talking about the case of a true amateur who's now going to just go about his business sewing in his amateurish way, ubein l'uman, or whether we're talking about a craftsman she'oisa Maaseh Hedyot, who's going to have to be careful to do a Maaseh Hedyot. Ein a mutter kim kishoisa oisa la'atzmai. This is only mutter if you're sewing for yourself. Oy b'shvel acherim b'chinam, or you're doing it for somebody else, but you're not getting paid. But if you're sewing for somebody else and you're getting paid, that's forbidden, even if you're doing it l'tzarech hamoed, unless you're doing it to get paid because you simply don't have food to put on the table. Okay, that concludes this Siman. We're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan on Gans Klal Yisrael. The Rabban Shalom should send Yeshuas and Refuas and Parnasa to all, and we should be zeichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek b'meher v'yameinu amen. Everybody have a wonderful Shabbos. Mir Tzeh Hashem. I will see you next week.